the huge upgrade Mercedes is bringing, and it has Red Bull worried. So we're going to be getting through that in today's video, but before we get into it, make sure you like this video and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want more F1 content like this. But let's get into this story. So Lewis Hamilton is to gain an advantage for French Grand Prix in boost for a first win race. Lewis Hamilton will be set for a huge boost in his bid to win his first race of the season this weekend at the French Grand Prix, as Carlos Sainz is set to face an engine penalty. Hamilton holds an incredible record for winning a race in every season that he's completed in F1. That impressive feat is under threat more than ever this year through this Mercedes yet to give him a car capable of challenging at the front of race wins. The Austrian Grand Prix represented the halfway point of the season with 11 races left to the campaign. While Mercedes started on the back foot, they've seen huge improvements in recent races. Either George Russell and Hamilton have managed to finish off podium in 5 of the last 6 Grand Prix, but neither Mercedes driver is yet to break the second step of the podium or higher. Red Bull and Ferrari have set the pace throughout the year, with the former teams sitting top of the Constructors' Championship. Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen have shared the majority of their race wins this year, with both Sergio Perez and Sainz winning 1 apiece. In the races where Sainz had to retire due to engine faults or other issues, he's regularly up challenging, and Hamilton is still yet to finish in front of the Spaniard. But the French Grand Prix will be Hamilton's best chance to do that, with Sainz likely out to running to compete for a podium spot. The 27-year-old suffered an engine failure last time out in Austria, meaning he will need a new power unit for this weekend's race. That will see him drop to the back of the grid for Sunday and give Hamilton a boost in his chances of catching the other frontrunners. Hamilton will still need a car capable of pushing Ferrari and Red Bull, but Leclerc will not have his teammate there to help him in any situations. So I think this is really important things, and obviously luck of the draw, Hamilton has a great opportunity to finally get that win, and the characteristics of the track at Paul Ricard are expected to work in Mercedes' favor due to the high-speed corners and smooth track surfaces. And I do think that's where they really do flourish, even with their car not being up to the standard that Mercedes is used to. I can definitely see them, taking at least podium position, whether it's Russell or Hamilton, but I do feel Hamilton is going to go for it, or even get that number 1 spot. Now, more upgrades are also set to be introduced, which could be the difference for the Silver Arrows to finally challenge Red Bull and Ferrari on the track. But not having Sainz up there from the start of the race on Sunday will give Hamilton hope at least for another podium, if not even more. So, introducing a new upgrade package at the British Grand Prix, Mercedes have enjoyed a step forward in competitiveness and were able to properly mix it up in front of the field for the first time this season at Silverstone. Lewis Hamilton looked to have a genuine shot at victory at his home race before eventually had to settle for 3rd place behind Ferrari's Carlos Sainz and the Red Bull's Sergio Perez following a dramatic last safety. Although Mercedes were unable to replicate the level of performance in Austria, the team were still closer to Ferrari and Red Bull than they expected at a circuit that has not been the happiest of hunting grounds for the Silver Arrows in recent years, with Hamilton picking up his 3rd consecutive podium finish. Mercedes are expected to be stronger again in France thanks to the characteristics at Rich Paul Ricard, which features high-speed corners and smooth track surfaces, which we talked about, and despite suffering a narrow defeat to Max Verstappen at last year's French Grand Prix, Mercedes boast a strong record at Paul Ricard, with Hamilton winning 2 of the 3 races to be held in the south of France since the race's revival in 2018. With further upgrades rumored to be introduced by the German manufacturer across the 2 races, will France be the Mercedes finally brings their winning drought in 2022 to an end? So I think this really is going to be important, and it is going to play a huge part. Mercedes F1 team have confirmed that they have made a huge investment into sustainable aviation fuel as part of their drive to reduce carbon emissions. With F1 as a sport taking steps to slowly but surely become a carbon net zero sport by 2030, Mercedes have announced a measure that they have taken in a bid to help them reduce their own carbon footprint. With the nature of F1's championship meaning aviation logistics are a necessary requirement, accounting for around 25% of an F1 team's carbon emissions annually, Mercedes have identified that finding ways to reduce the environment impact of those flights is a critical area in which to make changes. As part of that, Mercedes have announced a multi-million-dollar investment into sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, and with this fuel being renewable and water-derived aviation fuel. As a relatively new technology, the current levels such as fuel availability availability as well as the production itself is quite limited, but Mercedes are hopefully their investment and support of SAF will allow it to put itself in the shop window and encourage further investment. As Formula One operates at the forefront of automotive technology, we have a responsibility to ensure we are at the cutting edge innovation in sustainable technologies, a Mercedes press release said. SAF will become a significant component of our team's sustainability strategy, reflecting our desire to drive the change within F1 for more sustainable racing. Our purchase of sustainable aviation fuel will be used for our indirect Scope 3 aviation emissions, which are excluded from the F1 cost cap, such as flights to Grand Prix locations and other business air travel. By purchasing SAF claims, we'll be able to achieve close to 50% reduction in our race team personnel air travel footprint, and will continue to offset our remaining aviation carbon emissions with gold standard offset whilst we work on the industry to scale SAF availability. So I think those are all really important things, and I think it's fantastic that they are looking for sustainability in that way. So like we mentioned before, I think the Paul Ricard circuit will really play to Mercedes' advantage, and I can definitely see them gaining momentum from this French Grand Prix. Now I'm sure you don't need reminding, but at Silverstone they had an absolutely epic race as Mercedes managed to provide a threat to the top two teams, while Lewis Hamilton looked to be in the mix for victory. Ultimately, Hamilton has settled for third place, but the British driver moved on both Leclerc and Sergio Perez at the final corner as the three scraped it out in front of Parisian. Home crowd will live the long in memory. Fortunately, we do not have to wait long for the chance to potentially see something similar, as Paul Ricard is a track that has some similarities to Silverstone, with high-speed cornering and a smooth track surface that should play in Mercedes' hands a little more than Austria did. The top two teams will be worried because Mercedes being in the mix and potentially taking points off them adds an unpredictability to the title fight. There's a chance that Hamilton and George Russell could take points off one of Red Bull and Ferrari, benefiting the other team and either closing up the standings or opening up gaps even wider. Lewis Hamilton has been riding a wave of positivity as of late. According to the 7-time world champion, there's a good chance of Mercedes winning a race this season. At the start of the season, Mercedes were woefully off the pace at all times. It appeared that the team would find it hard to pick it up anything meaningful this season. Since the F1 Spanish Grand Prix, however, there have been improvements. The car has gotten better and the porpoising is now a thing of the past, so much so that it has given Lewis Hamilton the belief that the team could win a race this season. Speaking to the media, Hamilton talked about how encouraging it was to see improvements the team has made in the last few races. He also felt that with a little bit more digging, the team could end up closing the gap to the front even further. So he actually said this in a quick interview. It's definitely been hugely encouraging, particularly because for a long time we would make changes and not see to do it what we thought it was going to do or improve the car. It was a good step in Barcelona, but then we had several difficult races following it. There we just had the last few races which were quite strong, and that's really encouraged us that we're moving in the right direction and that's really potential in the car. With a little bit more digging, a little bit more hard work, hopefully we can get a bit closer to having a chance of winning a race. So I truly believe we can get a race win this year. So obviously he isn't really feeling too confident, and I honestly don't think that the Mercedes can honestly pull it off and win the constructors. However, I do love to see the positivity that Lewis Hamilton has when it comes to at least winning a race, keeping his record alive, and also keeping, Mercedes in good spirits as well. Now, Lewis Hamilton has admitted that it's fair to say that he didn't feel confident about picking up a win earlier in this season. The Mercedes was close to a second behind Red Bull and Ferrari in qualifying, and it did not appear as if they'd catch up. Earlier this year, I definitely wasn't sure we'd ever get a win in this car. Obviously, that's not the way we like to think, but it was feeling like, goodness me, it's a long way to catch everyone up, knowing the progress everyone makes. The Mercedes driver is also a 3-race podium streak and has in top form recently. So I think all of these things are very important, like we talked about, guys. With the French Grand Prix coming up, it is going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. So all eyes seem to be on Mercedes as the Formula One circus rocks up at the Le Castellet next weekend for a 2022 French Grand Prix. No one seems able to predict. While Ferrari and Red Bull have so far dominated the 2022 F1 calendar, the paddock is expected a big push for Mercedes at the circuit Paul Ricard. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell have not had the best of seasons. The 7-time world champion has been his rival Max Verstappen move on from last year's animosity to go wheel-to-wheel with Charles Leclerc instead. Russell, meanwhile, is making the best from a bad deal in the car that continues to be bamboozle his new team. Most expect Mercedes' current misfortunes, and they are firmly third in the F1 Constructors' Championship, to dry up once car floor flexing regulations are implemented after the summer break. But the Silver Arrows don't need to hang around for regulation changes to gun for the race win next weekend. That is according to, it seems, pretty much everyone in the sport. Ex-Renault driver Joylen Palmer, writing in his Formula 1 column, reckons Mercedes are primed to conquer Paul Ricard but must get qualifying right. It's one of the most smoothest circuits, made up of predominantly medium and high-speed corners, Palmer says. Mercedes have always gone well there in the past, and it surely poses their best chance of fighting for victory on merit so far this year. So like I mentioned before, obviously they probably can't win the Constructors or anything like that. However, I do still think it is great for them to have a win under their belt, whether it's Hamilton or whether it's Russell, but most likely probably going to be Hamilton. So far, the Mercedes race pace has been significantly better than their qualifying form if they hope to win in France. They must show more one-lap pace on Saturday to get themselves in the mix at the start. It's one thing having race pace to match the leaders, but when you concede as much track position as they are doing at the moment, a victory fight will always be tough, and that's what cost them the last couple of races. So I think all these things are very important, guys. I want you to let me know down in the comments what you think. What is going on? Will Mercedes pull this off, and will they actually win the French Grand Prix? I got my money on it. I think, Hamilton can definitely win it. He can definitely get first place, and I think he's capable of getting pole position as well when it comes to qualifying. Russell, on the other hand, he can definitely make podium, at least I reckon top 5. So I think it's going to be an interesting race. Let me know down in the comments what you think, and yeah, guys, I'll see you soon. Peace.